Welcome, everyone, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. And thank everyone for attending. And our first order of business is the review of minutes. And Larry, are you saying that because it's recorded, we don't have any formal minutes other than the recording?
That is correct.
Okay.
Oh,
So, is there anything?
Approve the video. It was lovely.
The video, all we have to do is post the video.
Okay. So you don't need a motion then for the number 2.
No. Well, certainly we're not checking for typos or omissions.
It is what it is. So let the minutes note that the record of the previous month's meeting was posted online.
it's interesting. It's really somewhat user unfriendly that way because who's going to sit through the whole transcript? It's accurate, but it's less informative in a way.
Yeah.
But if you wish, I can make a transcript of it and post.
You know, I think a short transcript would be more useful to the public. What do you think, John and Richard? You know, just a
is
short
true.
summary. Here's
Even a transcript of the audio, I don't know if that's doable.
Yeah, I know there are rules around these live meetings where you are supposed to be posting the recording of the meeting. But I will double check. But I will still do a transcript for you.
Yeah. But Larry, I mean, it's all a new playing field. So, you know, it's something to get used to. But just having the video recording, when we actually took some motions, no one's going to ever know those motions happened.
Right.
So it seems like as a minimum, we ought to have somewheres where any votes we took are recorded, where people can see them.
Okay.
But, you know, maybe that's something to talk to the council about, or what they, you know, what they feel is best to do.
It's actually not the council.
I don't mean the council, I mean counselors,
It's not even them, it's the Secretary of State rules around open meeting law.
yeah. But since we did take a rather important motion, I think that needs to be shown somewheres.
We will have it minuted and provided to you.
Thank you. We can officially approve it next meeting. Okay, great. The next is public comment. Anyone here to make a public comment?
See,
Okay.
Ashley, do you have anything to comment on? Ashley
No
Wenger?
comment, Larry. I'm on the call to join Stephanie for the farmers market update.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Nice to know that you're here for that purpose. That's great, thank you. Okay, so having no one here for public comment, we'll move on to the town market update. Stephanie?
Yep, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I'm back from last month's meeting to provide an update on our plan for opening the market next month. And since the last Board of Health meeting, the State Public Health Commissioner put out orders in late April, which were more specific from the prior communications from MDR. And so planning over the past several weeks has been to put in place a new layout and, you know, ways in which we would follow each of these rules. So the documents that were sent to you today include the MDR bulletin, the orders from the state, as well as a document that we put together called COVID Operations and Rules. And I know that was sent earlier today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. And I don't think we need to go through it, in depth, but it's really a proposal presentation to the town to showcase what the plan is very specifically, including a map. So before I jump into any details, I just want to ask if anyone had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, and I do have some questions. So I don't
Great.
know if you want to hold them till you're finished speaking, or how do you want to approach it?
So maybe just for starters, like John, Barbara, did anyone else get a chance to look at it, just so I know what information you have to
Yeah.
start?
I did look at it.
Great, great.
I need to be educated somewhat. I've been on calls all day.
Sure. So, and Barbara, you have the documents on your email. Larry sent them earlier.
Yes.
So I think what would make the most sense, and if you're able to pull them up on your computer, if not, no problem, but I think I can walk you through just a little bit of the document and the map, because the map is a nice visual to kind of understand what will be different. So Richard, I'll have you ask questions in just a moment, because I think that's a good way to do it. But just to kind of give a little overview, I mean, we, as you know, markets are essential, and we felt even with everything going on, it was important if we were able to open for many, many reasons. The market with its SNAP Match program serves a lot of food insecure people in the community. And we have grant funds for that match program. And, for all the reasons we know, having access to healthy food and supporting small locally sourced, businesses and such is important. And really important that some people don't understand is that farmers markets take years to establish, and just shutting down for a year is a really big risk. So even though running the market this year will be a tremendous amount of work for the organizers, for all the things we have to put in place, it's really worth it, because if we don't run it, we run the risk of not being able to bring the market back. And I know for sure that people value it for so many reasons. So I just want to say that up front, even though it looks like, we're heading for an opening, I do want to obviously talk through and see what you all think about the plan and what concerns and questions you have. But as you know, we'll be in Saltonstall Park again in the same location, but we will be in an enclosed space. DPW has been very supportive of the market, and they help with setup and breakdown. And I've already met with Bob DeRico, who's the park supervisor. And I know that they're willing and wanting to help us in any way that they can with supplies and setup. So the diagram kind of shows you, and the document spells out how we will have a designated entrance and exit, and then we will enclose the park with various cones, barricades, and such at any entry points. Of course, working with the town, making sure it's accessible, making sure that we're not blocking, the ramp and various things. Throughout the layout, we have thought out, and just so you know, I went through the state orders, and one by one, we integrated these pieces into the plan. So there will be, a maximum amount in, there will be markers throughout, there will be signage, there will be 2 hand wash stations, there will be sanitizer, all of our rules just for the market itself, which we can go through. Of course, the health department does the permitting and puts out all the policies for the vendors. So that's another layer. And obviously we'll work with them. So there's lots of checkpoints this year. We will need to kind of really add to our base of help with volunteers this year, because we're going to need a lot more people to be at the market, throughout. And so I'm working on that. I've had some good success with the new mutual aid network in town, as well as our returning volunteers. So that's just kind of a quick overview to kind of understand what we're doing. It's similar to what you see in a grocery store. There's all kinds of different, rules, and you see how things operate differently. And somewhat of a similar way, we'll be doing that. Of course, fortunately, we're outdoors. Most people these days want to get their shopping done. We won't be doing extra programming, no community booth, no music. I mean, it's really about providing, you know, the essential service of a farmer's market in the community. It's unfortunate that what people loved was that it was a, you know, community gathering space. That's not something we're going to encourage. It will be very different this year. So I'll stop there, and then depending on what questions you have and what's on your mind, I can point to the document. Richard?
Thank you. Yeah, it's just, I think it's fairly simple stuff. In the third paragraph, you talk about the operational checklist, et cetera, et cetera. Near the end, you'll be sending the market rules and updates through all these different media, and then you're encouraging pre-ordering with vendors. So you said you're going to have a shopping plan and list from each vendor, and people and prices, and people will go to the vendor's website. Is that how it'll work?
Yep. So when we sent the newsletter out, just letting people know the market was, you know, scheduled to open this season in June, we put a list of our vendors who were at the time, and many still are, doing, you know, orders and deliveries just on their own or through collaboratives they're in. So they've been doing that anyway, and we'll encourage it for people who really want to just go to the market. They know exactly what they're getting. If the vendor's set up to do a pre-order prepayment online, then that makes it that much easier for them. And that's really what a lot of markets are trying to encourage. So it just means that people can get what they want, but they don't have to go and wait in line. It just minimizes the number of people. So yes, that's one of the ways that people can shop.
Stephanie, Richard, 1 second. Can I follow up on that? So if I pre-order, do I have to go through the whole line to that vendor, or can I pick it up curbside?
So right now we're sticking with the traditional model. We entertained what many other markets are doing. They're doing a pre-order pickup like the first hour or whatever time frame. But we decided for our market it would be best not to do that, because not enough people are doing that already, and to take an hour from your market time where others who walk in can't come in because they haven't pre-ordered. So the only thing I could say, John, is because we're going to have fewer people and some control around numbers and lines, you know, it won't be like tons of people at once where you have to wait a very long time. And at the same time, we'll work with our vendors. I mean, I think we need a couple weeks to get in a rhythm and kind of see what kind of turnout there is. And then maybe, you know, there can be some communication when they put the order in. It could be, you know, best times, the slowest times of the market are midday if you want to come in. But at this point, we're not going to try and do something, you know, very different, which is reserve pre-order pickup, you know, prepay, pre-order, prepay pickup.
I think also with the system that you're moving forward, it will encourage people to, even if they pre-order, to look at the other booths and maybe pick up some other stuff, so the vendors do get their business.
Right.
Whereas if you isolated the pre-ordered people, they may never go through the market.
That's right.
So I kind of agree with you, although they might have to wait a little bit to go get their order.
Yep. I agree.
Stephanie, can I just add to that? The other advantage to pre-ordering is kind of what Stephanie hinted at, is that you can, because you know the farmer and vendor has what you need, you don't have to come right at the start of the market. So hopefully it'll help space the customers out throughout the market, because not everyone needs to come right at the beginning to get, you know, first dibs at the fish or meat selection or produce if they've already pre-ordered.
And this is, how are we going to, or how are people learning about this option for the market?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the prepay, pre-shop option.
Right. So as I said in the last newsletter, we said where to find your vendors now, sort of pre-season, off-season. So for those that are on our newsletter or pick us up on social media, then they have that information. Many are shoppers from past years and they know who their vendors are. They know where to find them. As we start to roll out the communications for this year, which will be very soon, like next week, once we've, kind of have approval on everything, we will let customers know what the options will be, what will be different this year. So they'll get a lot of information, a preview of what to expect, because it will be different. So we will, when we put vendors for this year on our website, that's where people can easily go, and we'll continue to let them know, like if you can't wait until mid-June to get, lilac hedge lamb or whatever, you can order now in advance. And, because many of them are doing regular deliveries to Watertown anyway. But there'll be plenty of communication so people know what to expect. And we're still in the planning, we have our vendors and we're looking for a couple more, but we're still in the process of communicating with our vendors how the market's going to work this year. So that'll become a more interactive conversation so that they understand what we're doing and, know what to expect.
Okay.
Well, regarding the media again, the town website, does it have like a major hot button for the farmers market?
Yeah, well, so a couple of things. On the health page, on the website, on the town website, there are links for the farmers market website, which is under the umbrella Live Well Watertown. And the town is always happy to put it out as a news flash. As a matter of fact, last year they put it out, the manager's assistants would just put it up on the thing every week for me. I didn't even have to do it. So there's a lot of support. People share it out. I send it out on Notify Me. So we have lists for it as well.
We all signed up for the alerts and that type of thing. And I imagine they're probably reserving that for true urgent messaging. So it wouldn't be an option to send a text to everybody who's on that list, say, hey, the farmers market's coming, check out the website or something along that line?
I can ask, and they've been supportive. So it just depends on how they see it, in terms of whatever other information is priority. But I think, there's a real effort to move, obviously, right now. It's important to get people the information they want and need. I don't know if they'll use that more widely, but certainly if they will. I mean, on the manager's updates, there have been, the weekly updates which have gone out, and I don't know if all of that is read in the phone call and text message, but there's been a lot of, it's getting longer and longer with updates. And with our snap match, I think, it's an important piece of news to get out to the community. So we'll certainly try.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, is this I'm looking at the map now, is this the same location as last year?
It is, yes. It's Saltonstall Park. And last year, most of the vendors were up on the diagonal line pathway, that runs a little bit parallel with Main, and also White's on the other end. And we'll be using that pathway again, but really just one side, because we want to allow for not only spacing along that line for people to be in line with the 6-foot distance, but for people who want to walk the path, that whole grass area on the other side gives people plenty of room if they feel like they're too close to people in line.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to go straight back, because then you're blocking the pathway. It just gets complicated. There is a lot of space in between these vendor tents compared to previous years where they were practically next to each other. So this is way more than the order is putting on there. And it allows us, if we wanted to add one, as the season got in, there's still plenty of space. But we're also down on the brick area. So down by the Monument Soldier Park down, right on the corner of Thaxter where Town Hall is. So we're using that space as well. And that's where you'll enter in because you've got a lot of sidewalk space. It's not near the meters. I mean, Ashley and I spent hours outside measuring and going through, and I had Gideon out there and I had Bob Dorico. So there was a lot of input, and between other markets and sharing of, you know, pictures of some of the density markets online with the whole farmers market manager group. You know, it's been very well thought out. Not to say that, you know, there may be things to learn and modify as we go, but for the space we have, I think this is probably the best to run a safe market.
And the two,
Go ahead.
there's two number ones and two number twos. Does that just mean it's the same vendor with two tables?
Exactly. Those are our bigger produce vendors. And that's where, you know, people tend to want to kind of to start. And if they would rather not wait in line and run up to, you know, number 5, 6, or 7 and grab their pre-ordered meat or fish or whatever it is, they can come back around and enter again. So that's going to be very new for people because you used to just turn around and go wherever you wanted. So that's going to be, you know, something for people to get used to, but I think people will also appreciate the safety measures that have been put in place.
And so
That was one of my questions, because I tend to go back and forth, and basically we're saying people will not be able to back up, or they'll have to go back around.
So, you know, and this is where I would bring Larry into the conversation. You know, we don't know if the state orders will change in 2 weeks or 2 months, or, you know, my feeling is we use this very safe plan, even if things are relaxed some, because I don't know how we'd go back to this if we change it, you know, and we don't know what will happen right through the market, which is mid-October. So to answer that question the best I can, I would say, you know, this is the plan. If people hate it and the state, you know, relaxes the orders, do we try and modify? I mean, that would be a question, you know, we would have to, we'd have to consider that if that is the case.
And a limited number of people. Have you arrived at a number, and how did you get there?
Yeah, well, so the state put out, you know, a ratio per square footage, which is actually kind of a lot of people. It would allow a lot in our space. The reason we didn't put a number in there as of now is because we're still working on 2 potential vendors. So by the end of the week, hopefully next week, when we are sure of exactly how many vendors will be there for that space, we will come up with a number, and I can certainly share that out. But it will be conservative compared to, at least for the start, until we kind of get a rhythm and see how things go and see how we do with the lines. I guess, you know, one consideration is if you've got a lot of people in the market, if you're at your max and they're all in line at the produce vendor, and now you've got 20 people in line and nobody's up on the pathway yet because they all want to get their produce, then, you know, it's going to take some work of how to kind of keep things moving. But yes, we are going to have all those numbers worked out in advance. We don't want to be figuring them out on opening day if we get a big turnout. Because we have to have that on the signage so that there's, you know, so people know, you know, what to expect. There's a limited number or something so that people know what, you know, what for future shopping trips, they can anticipate, you know, well, they only let 50 people in at a time. Therefore, if I drive by and it's crowded, I'll come back in a half hour. So, you know, we are going to have to put that information out at some point.
how many vendors do we have now?
So what you're seeing on the map, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So probably we're not going to have, you know, more than 10, but I think we're starting out with 7 to 8. We have some bi-weekly, so there may be some weeks, like every other week, we might have one more vendor because we have an uneven number of bi-weekly. But it will be a smaller market, for sure. and it, it just works with the space, and that's what you'll see at most of the other markets. A lot of more essential vendors with the spacing and the changes. A lot of market spaces can accommodate, and depending on their community, there's oftentimes a preference for just essential or whatever it is.
And Stephanie, I'm correct. There's no prepared food, so
Right.
you've lost your vendors that have actual something to put in your mouth.
That's right. I mean, if something is like a, prepackaged bagels or something, but no, our, former vendor that served food, made and served food, no, we don't, there won't be any of that as of now.
The spacing at the booths is basically, you're going to have to be 6 feet away from the booth and look from that point, and then purchase and move to the booth to make payment? Or is it going to form a line then? How's that going to work?
So using one of the, you're talking about the vendor tents, right?
Well, no, I'm talking about, so as a customer, I'm moving along this conveyor belt, for lack of a better term,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to stop at booth number 2.
Yep.
Is there a line waiting at booth number 2, and I just get in line, and I'm supposed to stay 6 feet behind the person in front of me?
There'll be markers. There'll be markers on the ground of 6 feet. So there'll be 6 feet markers everywhere for the lines, so people know exactly, including on Main Street where people are waiting in line to come in, similar to what you see outside the grocery stores.
Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. I'm talking about like a particular vendor that's popular, and there's 6 people in front of me that want to stop at that particular booth.
Yep.
Does that mean that at some point I will be like 36 feet away from the booth in a single line with people in front of me?
So
I'm just trying to picture.
Yeah, the safety of it.
Keeping a safe distance.
Yes. So the way it looks small in the map, but that's the whole brick area. So, and the reason why, again, I didn't give you the numbers is when you look at 1 and 2, so 1 is really going to be 3 tents, and 2 is going to be 1 to 2. And the configuration is based on where we can create the most space. So all of those little dots look like you're going to have 10 people in line, but we're not. There's going to be a limit. So it might be 4. And again, once we're absolutely sure on our vendors, the markings will be for 4 waiting spots for vendor 1 and for vendor 2. I don't know at this point if it'll be 3 or 4. I don't think it'll be 5 at our market. It'll probably be 3 or 4. So people will wait in line outside and they'll come in. And so that's where you'll have very specific markers and people will be in line. The vendors themselves, they'll have different setups. Some actually have plexiglass. Some are putting tables, like 2 tables in front to create that distance between customer and vendor who's serving, the customer. And they may have display, touchless display, and then bagged things that people will point to, but everybody is sort of doing their part to keep creating that distance. Does that answer, Richard, your question?
Yeah. I don't envy the people making the flow happen. I think it's going to be quite challenging.
I know.
And Stephanie, no one can actually pick up an object. They would be handed whatever they want.
Yeah. Right. So those are the rules with, right. I mean, unlike the old days where everybody's picking through and things like that, it's a challenge for produce vendors, not others. Other vendors, it's, usually it's, whether it's frozen or prepackaged, you just say what you want. And a lot of them are having like the displays in front, and that's not to be sold. It's just so people know what their options are, and then they'll hand it. Yeah.
So that first person in line will look at the merchandise from 6 feet away. Hopefully be able to see it, because I don't know, I'll be challenged. And pick what they want, and then they step up to the table to exchange whether card or money, etc. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so what the this year, with all the new regulations, vendors are supposed to really have at least 2 staff. So you have a designated person who's doing the payment process and another person who is getting whatever the products are and giving it to them. And that's exactly what we'll be doing at the manager's booth, because we process the EBT SNAP cards, and we'll have 2 people at separate ends, and there's a whole protocol. So yes, and those are the things when we, send the checklist to the vendors and do our communications with them, we need to be assured that they all have a system that is going to be safe and meet the state's requirements and, the best practices checklist that we send out. Because if, people don't feel safe, they're not going to want to go and shop there.
So explain to me a bit how the cash or the money transaction occurs and people are still 6 feet apart. How does that work?
So, I'll say what I know, and then I'll have Ashley chime in because she can talk a little bit more about how the other market that she worked at did some of this over the winter. But there are a lot of touchless systems now. Some credit cards you can just swipe, and you can use Apple Pay, Google Pay. There's all of these options that I think more of maybe the younger generation uses. But if it's possible, like an electronic card reader, so if they have equipment that can prevent that kind of exchange and touching, I'm not talking about cash, because that's obviously different. Then vendors are encouraged to do whatever they can to prevent that. But in some cases, people are going to pay with cash, and we're encouraging them to try and have prices that are whole dollar amounts for one, and to have, so you don't have to do a lot of exchange. But that in a lot of cases is up to the customer. A lot of people are using non-cash even for a farmer's market, but we can't say no cash. So some of this is really going to be up to the vendors to make it safe for everybody. Sometimes, equipment is a little more expensive if it's safer. So each one may do it a little bit differently, but certainly for the guidelines, they, again, assuming they stand, they're going to have to follow it. We may need to exchange our equipment with customers. We are going to have to use PPE and disinfect in between, because when we process EBT, the customer has to put in their PIN number, and then we need to finish the transaction. So there is going to be some need, even though we can do this with distance, we're passing the device.
Audience.
So in some cases, even with every effort, you can't totally avoid some exchange. Ashley, do you want to add anything?
Well, and I guess that's where the gloves and the sanitizer come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just imagine when you go to Whole Foods or the Shaw's, at some point you're within 6 feet of that cashier or that person very briefly. And I think, to be realistic, that's what we're talking about, minimizing, but we're not going to totally eliminate that right. Less than 6 feet distancing.
And, I think the huge benefit here is we're outside. That is a benefit over being at an indoor market.
Stephanie, are we doing anything to try and make sure our vendors aren't infected at the point they're there? Because that's the biggest risk, is that you'd have a vendor that would start exposing everybody all day.
That's right. So I talked a little bit with Will about this. Right now it's sort of a lot of communication in an honors system, but as you know, how much can you really be assured and control that? Because, we don't have any kind of protocol in place, even in town hall. We're not doing any kind of temperature check. None of that is in place yet. So it's really a matter of just really reinforcing that the vendors are responsible.
I wonder if there's a lot of people have some nice checklists that, again, it's honor, but at least if you've checked off that you don't have any of these.
Yep, go ahead.
And I just wonder, we don't have that many vendors, whether it's worth them at the beginning of the session, doing some kind of
A checklist.
checklist.
So the Mass Farmers Market organization that runs a few of the city markets shared out a volunteer form, which is very much a checklist where somebody has to say, you know, really sort of a health status sheet. So we could certainly do that for our market. And, you know, we were just going to kind of do a walk around and just chat and make sure, you know, everybody's feeling good and, you know, has gone through whatever protocol that the business owner, you know, if that person isn't there themselves selling at the market, then they're responsible for making sure that their staff is in good health before sending them out. But if you know, are recommending we do some kind of a checklist, I
I looked to
absolutely.
Larry about that, but I think, yeah, I guess I think, you know, when things start to happen or something untoward happens that keep you guys busy, to have some kind of regular process that all the vendors have to go through each week.
Yes.
And John, I also, from a liability standpoint, I think it helps if it indicates we're doing everything we can do.
Yeah.
So a questionnaire, not just do you have these symptoms, but, you know, in the last 14 days, have you been in contact with anybody who's been, who's known positive?
That's
You know,
right. That's usually one of the check boxes.
Right.
Okay.
And then you have that record. So, you know, as the vendors arrive, someone just asks them those questions and checks them off.
Yeah.
And you keep that documentation just in case.
That's great.
And I would be sure that they know that ahead of time.
Yes. And I think as we, you know, as we're sharing out information with them, which is really weekly now, and they're used to this because they vend at many markets, is, you know, they want to know what's the protocol, what are they going to expect. So, you know, we can let them know because hopefully it reinforces their motivation to make sure they've gone through this with their own staff if they're not, you know, coming on their own.
Especially since they need two people and who knows who they drag along for the second person.
That's right. That's right. And there are definitely going to be cases where they're not, you know, they're not going to have a second person. I mean, I'm definitely anticipating that for some of the smaller vendors. For example, let's say, you know, our fish vendor who comes with coolers and everything, you know, maybe 10 items max, and it's all frozen. And so it's a very quick kind of, but there'll just be a lot of disinfecting in between, you know, if they're not able to separate who's, you know, who's passing out the food and, you know, who's doing the payment. I mean, that is the preference. And for big vendors, you've got to have that, especially produce. But, you know, in the farmers market world, it's a little bit different. It's a lot of small business owners. And sometimes, you know, people just have situations and they, you know, things changed and they might just come alone. So it's something for us to think about in terms of how strict our policies are, if, you know, and again, that's going to come down through the state. I think when things are crystal clear that we have to follow them, then it's, you know, if it's not for us to decide, then that's a different story.
I always recommend or remind people that it's okay to go beyond the state minimums too, if we think it's appropriate.
Yeah, and the checklist comes out of an organization that's called, it's CISA, so it's Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture. And they have a checklist for best practices on everything, you know, social distancing, signage, you know, money handling and everything. And that's what we're going to use and adapt. It really goes, I think, above and beyond. It's, you know, really conservative, but you know, we feel that would be important, especially as a town-run market. I mean, I talk with Meyer, our insurance agent, about farmers market. I've talked a lot with them. So they are happy to know that we are working hard to put, you know, many measures in place for running a safe market. Yeah, I'm happy to share the checklist with you folks if you would like to take a look at it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Could you talk about these hand wash stations? What does that look like? I'm curious.
So the one we have and used in previous years is portable. It's outdoor. It has the foot pump. You know, you have to fill it with water, and then you have to have, you know, a bin or basin for the water that's used for washing out in it, and have soap and paper towels. We are going to need to buy another one, and I'm looking at them right now. As I did the first time we bought one a few years ago, I had asked Raj to take a look at it, and, you know, I will have Raj and Larry take a look at, you know, what our options are. I can't buy an $800 one. So, you know, and it's got to be portable because it's got to go from our shed to, you know, one of the points that we have it at. But we'll have them at the entrance and one in the middle of the market. So there'll be an encouragement when people walk in to wash their hands, and we'll have, if not pump, then a spray sanitizer as an option for people. That way we don't have to worry about the touch point of everybody hitting a pump. And then that is there for hand washing. If people feel like after they take a receipt or whatever, or if a vendor feels they want to go wash their hands, they don't have to go in the building. It'll be right there.
And what is MM?
Market manager's tent.
Oh, okay.
And that, you know, again, we were up on the grass, but this year there's going to be so much of a presence with farmers market staff and volunteers that I plan to have Ashley and another person at that table throughout the market. I want to be able to roam because, you know, between volunteers and whatever else is going on, you know, it's going to be a little bit more mobile than usual because it won't be our regular operations.
One family member at a time.
Yeah, that's what, you know, some markets are encouraging, you know, pre-plan, you know, see who our vendors are, come with a list, send one person. So those are, you know, all the things that we can kind of just put out there as suggestions. It's also
so it's a recommendation. It's a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not mandated. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, even though it's a park, it's not the old days where people would come with kids and everybody's, you know, playing and tossing a ball, and all of those things have to come out this year.
Stephanie, this is very impressive what you've organized. Just one sort of different kind of thought is, are we able to make any connection between the market and the food bank in terms of, is there waste at the end in some cases? And
yeah, so last year we had a wonderful partnership with both food pantries, and the vendors, and the reason why we didn't do this in previous years is because we moved the market from Thursday to Wednesdays, and the food pantries, or typically before COVID, were open Tuesday, Thursday. So I arranged with Kathy and Beverly from the other food pantry to have someone come to the market around, you know, half hour before we closed or soon before. And we had, you know, we organized it so all vendors who wanted to donate anything left over. And it was wonderful. I mean, so many vendors were so generous. And I have pictures of them going out with, like, you know, lots and lots of food. They'd go back and forth to their car. So that was fabulous. And we'd like to do it again. And even though we'll have fewer vendors, I'm not sure, you know, if there'll be as much in terms of donations, but the town food pantry is only going to be open Tuesdays over the summer, and the other food pantry will be open on Thursdays. So I've been talking with them both. It looks like the non-town food pantry will benefit if there are some donations, but I've been talking with Anne Marie and Kathy, who's the coordinator over there, about possibly trying to pilot something so that our produce vendors who process HIP, the extension of SNAP, the instant rebate, that we might try piloting something where more folks who are eligible but aren't getting to the farmers market get to utilize that benefit. And that's something I could talk more about, you know, maybe down the road, but where we've got so much on our plate just to kind of get through, you know, transitioning to this for this year. It's something we might try midsummer or, maybe even off season with one of our vendors, so that even when the market ends, we can still be getting some of these benefits and, food to some of these, some of the people in town who are eligible.
Thank you. Any other questions for Stephanie or Ashley?
I'm good.
I think we hit her enough. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your support.
Okay. Larry, update on biotech?
Right now, I'm in the process of reviewing the forms and having them finalized so that everything can be in place, and have them published and sent out to all the vendors. We have a couple of people have reached out to us, and I'm meeting with. I've answered some of those questions, but that is the focus right now on biotech, to get it do the final reviews on it and get it published.
Great, thank you. When do we need to appoint members of the committee?
They have to be appointed by July 1.
Okay.
So that if they have to be appointed by July 1, that means that we would probably want their names by the next meeting, I assume.
Yes.
And how is that process going
There's
to?
one person who is going to be per se appointee, because it's the nominee of the fire chief who is confirmed. That nomination will be confirmed by the town manager, who would submit it to us, and then the other two members. We had sent out something earlier requesting it. I will have that published again.
Okay, so we have how many? I thought there's five members, right?
5. 2 public. Nominee of the fire chief with experience in hazardous materials, the health director or his designee, the board of health chair or his designee.
Okay, so you and I we should talk about who our designees are.
Correct.
Okay, good. So we'll try and do that in the next week or two, so we can be on the same page.
Will do. I hope we can find time between our busy schedules.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, updates.
365 cases, 242 cleared, 23 fatal, and 100 open. We are only getting confirmed cases from DPH, not cases that have done immunoglobulin tests that are probable. They still have to go to get a PCR test done to be confirmed. In the past week or so, it has been a bit up and down, but more down than up. So we are seeing cases slow down. Our challenge is not with new cases that we're getting, but with doing the contact tracing. The CTC Contact Tracing Collaborative that is being supported by Partners in Health is taking some cases, has taken all the contact tracing, will retains a number of them, but we do have some challenges around that tracebacks, and Will is meeting on a frequent basis with the supervisor who is assigned to the cases in Watertown to work out all the challenges we're facing.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are the challenges the complexities of tracing or the complexities of figuring out who does what?
It's a bit of both. Some of it is trying to understand when they say they've reached out to an individual, what does that mean? Does it mean that you've just made a phone call and not gotten an answer and said we've reached out to them? Or if the person is unreachable, how many times did you actually try to reach that person? So working out those, and then many of the cases, for one reason or the other, are not even answering. So there's that challenge on reaching them. And then there's also the interface with both the system that the people from the contact tracing collaborative are using and the Maven system, which we are using, which is a state managed system where we get all our cases from really talking to each other and having the same information. That has been the bigger challenge more than anything else.
Right. And how good are people's memories about where they've been and what they've done in the past 2 weeks? That seems to be another challenge.
It is always a challenge, and you try to jog people's memories. We know we're doing a great job on getting the information when we reach people because we have a system in place. Again, that is left up to the contact tracing collaborative when they're doing the cases. We're not totally certain what is happening on that end and what level of training was provided to those people to that end, to assist people in trying to remember.
Larry, I can speak to it a little bit. I'm a contact tracer for the Partners in Health. I've been doing it for 2 weeks now. So some of the questions you have, if you're not getting the answers from supervisor that's taking care of Watertown, you can let me know. I can also maybe answer them. For instance, we initially call 3 times. Once we get the Maven report, it tells us when the test was positive. We start the outreach. First day, we attempt 3 calls. If they have a voicemail, we leave a voicemail, and we also give them a callback number to call back. Second day, we will try 2 calls. Third day, we try 2 calls. If we still do not get a response, it gets bounced back to the local Board of Health. So that's the initial outreach. If we reach them, then we have case investigators who try to get as much detail as they can about those contacts and the history, and then we as contact tracers will further elaborate on that, getting that history, getting the contacts, especially if there's a high risk congregate housing, or if they think their contact was through a business where they work, et cetera, et cetera. And that information then is utilized for further contact tracing of those identified close contacts. It's somewhat complex, but it seems to be working. And there are certain protocols when it will get bounced back to the Board of Health. And those are the ones that I just mentioned. If it's, for instance, if it's a nursing home in Watertown, you're immediately going to be notified. They're not going to just try to start doing contact tracing. They're going to notify the local Board of Health of any really high-risk communities or congregate housing. But otherwise, they'll do 3 days of multiple attempts. And if we don't reach those individuals, then it goes back to the Board of Health with that indication that we've tried and we've been unable to reach this person.
Rich, for the contacts, presumably the person who's positive is hopefully going to stay inside.
Yeah, because it comes out of Maven first,
right?
And then contacts from that primary case, we're reaching out and getting histories, and those individuals will be put into the quarantine. So obviously the person that comes out of Maven is put into isolation. and then any identified contacts are put into quarantine, and we monitor them. People that we put into quarantine, we call every day. And so I have my caseload, and I have a list, and every day I'm calling that person and checking in and seeing if they've developed symptoms, if they're sticking to the quarantine, answering questions or concerns they may have. We have a strong support network for social services. If they say I can't feed my family, or I can't, I can't pay my bills, we have a separate group of people that we refer them to for that level of assistance as well. So it's pretty elaborate. I didn't mean to cut you off, John, if you had another question about that.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. And there's really pockets in Massachusetts, I can tell you. So my region is pretty quiet. I'm in the middle of the state. But Boston, Brockton, Holyoke, Springfield, there are pockets of extreme infection.
Yeah, the densely populated areas do have
Yeah.
higher concentrations.
Yeah, and there's a lot of correlation with socioeconomic status, frontline workers or homes with multiple individuals living in the same home. So there's lots of obvious reasons for high density and high levels of infection.
Yeah, I agree with that, because that was one of our observations as well. Because people with low SES
Right.
work jobs where if they don't turn up, they don't get paid, and they are more likely to go in even if they're infective or infected. Additionally, some of them speak a third language or a second language, sorry. Some of them speak second and third languages. And what we have found, some of them are wary of people calling them, despite us trying to assure them that, all we need to know is whether you're sick or not, what services you need, and give you information so that you don't infect others, and to make sure that you're okay. But getting that message across is challenging for someone who is worrying about someone knocking down their door and taking them to another place and they won't see their family. So that is a huge challenge.
It's a good point. That's part of one of the first parts of the conversation we have with them, is that reassurance that we are not a government agency out to get them, that we're only there to support them and to offer them assistance through this process. A lot of those folks that you touched on, they are afraid to not go into work, and we support them in that, help them to understand that unless they're working under the table, their employer has certain responsibilities, and we will intervene on their behalf if they tell us that, I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. My boss said, don't come in, never come back. We will contact the employer on their behalf, and we're a lot sterner with the employer, to be sure. So all those things are part of the contact tracing that we do.
Do you have a need for translators much of the time?
So we have a quick link on our, so everything goes through the computer, through the software. Just as I'm speaking to you now through the microphone on my computer, and we're all doing it. When we make a phone call, it dials through the computer. It's all in the software, and right on the screen is a button for language assistance, and it goes to AT&T language line, I think. And we have our own code, so it's very quick. It's very convenient. It works very well.
Oh, so you're saying it's something like it's a translating system that actually works well?
They're interpreters.
Oh, they're people.
They're people. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
good.
yeah, no, we don't using in like Google
Right.
Translate or any of that
Right.
stuff. No,
Okay.
no. So if you get someone and you immediately can tell that they're not understanding you, you try to get an idea of what language, and you immediately just hit the button, and it brings up the interpreter services, and then the rest of your interviews are conducted with the interpreter.
Larry, how are we doing with our conjugate or our nursing homes? We have what, 2 in town? Is that right?
Yeah, we do. One of the nursing homes had their entire facility tested, and I am happy to report that I got news this afternoon that they were all negative.
Great.
Another nursing home, we did have some challenges with cases, a lot of cases initially, but that has seemed to level off right now because of policies and procedures they have put in place. So, and they do care for a very highly susceptible population, people with a lot of comorbidities. So we did see some deaths associated with it, but most of them were extremely ill to begin with, and them contracting COVID-19 just exacerbated their conditions. Right now, what we are doing is we're started to move into the reopening phase, and some places have been allowed to open yesterday, and many are going to open next week on a limited basis. We're providing as much information as we can. We're meeting internally as a team to discuss what we need to have in place, because despite most places being allowed to open next week, we have to ensure that all the policies and procedures are in place to ensure safe opening. So we're reviewing that on a daily basis with the team, and we do expect things to go crazy next week. The other thing is there are many conflicting guidances or messages we're getting, so we're trying to piece through it. So we're working with the Department of Public Health. I've been on 2 teleconferences so far. There's another one on Friday, and we hope to get some clarity so we can provide it to all the businesses that are looking to open, given the guidance that is out there next week.
And my understanding is that most of those are like regular offices that would be opening at a very reduced capacity.
That is correct. The guidance we have so far is offices are allowed to open at 25% of their capacity. And that capacity is measured by individual offices, not the entire building. So you can't have an office that has 10 people in it with a building capacity of 40 under their occupancy guidance, and then have those 10 people count if no one else is coming in the building. It has to be 25% of that room capacity.
So if I have my own office, only a quarter of me can go in?
There are exceptions to it, and the exceptions are, of course, the health department, the police department, and the fire department, and other departments that were already under the essential services rules are not subject to those requirements.
So are all retail customer service establishments required to have approval from Department of Health or Watertown Board of Health?
No, the approval process is through some guidance, and they have to go through documents, sign off on those documents, and make sure that they comply with it and have those records on site for examination. We are
But
not
that's-
going out to each individual business to come.
Right, but are they submitting to you or to the state for that?
No one. They're keeping the records on site.
Okay.
We're all honorable folks, Rich. Did you know that?
Yeah.
But there are significant restrictions. For example, nail salons are not going to open up now. You have barbers and hairdressers, but their services they offer is limited. Next week, some retail shops can open up, but it's going to be for pickup only, not for people to come and browsing. So there are some significant restrictions on it.
Are we anticipating doing spot visits or spot checks?
I anticipate doing a lot of spot visits because I do anticipate a lot of complaints that is going to keep my inspection staff extremely busy.
Yeah.
And not only that, I think we are going to get a lot of questions that we have to sift through to assist our businesses. And I think that is where we're going to have more concerns coming into us, where people want to open back up and want to know what they need to do. And I've already fielded a call on that this afternoon where they call and ask, so we want to open back up, we want to do things right, what can we do? So I guided the person to the state reopening website and give them essentially the basic information that they require on occupancy. So it's going to be really baby steps for now. Phases are anticipated to last 3 weeks. So,
Larry, when you said you were going to be doing spot visits, does that mean to all sort, not only foods and restaurants, but beauty parlors and offices, anywhere that you hear of a complaint?
when we hear of a complaint, we have to investigate. That is something we don't have a real choice on.
So, and it can be any type of facility.
That is correct.
Okay.
There's some of them we will refer to the Department of Labor Standards, who is the primary agency in the reopening process for violations around establishments.
Thank you, Larry, for following up on Home Depot.
Oh, you're quite welcome. We are going to be, I asked Raj to go out there over the weekend because we do anticipate it being a long weekend and good weather, that a lot of people are going to be coming out. I know that they were saying previously that, no mask, no entry.
So to that point, we have so many, I'll call them mom and pop stores, small businesses with really tight spaces. I'm just thinking of the places I know that I used to frequent. I don't know how some of them are going to meet the requirements, frankly.
Well, as I said, right now it's phased entry. What I would guide you to is the state's website on reopening. There's a ton of guidance documents there.
Mm-hmm.
And smaller places, there is guidance on, and that excludes food establishments, by the way. Restaurants are still going to be on takeout for a while. If you wish, I can send you the document, the reopening document, and there's some guidance documents on the phased opening.
Is that the 4-stage proposal that Governor Baker Okay, yeah, I've seen
But
that.
it's not the flow chart. This is specifically about the different establishments, how their reopening is going to be phased. It's called Guidance for Industries on Reopening Plan.
Well, if you have it electronically, you want to forward it, that would be great.
Yeah, I do.
I've already read all the magazines in the house. I need something to read.
Well, I have a lot of reading I can share with you.
Well, I can tell you that my company isn't even thinking of opening our offices until after Labor Day. And my daughter's office in DC is doing the same thing. I mean, I think that a lot of companies are looking at this very cautiously and aren't going to do as much as they could even do at any point in time.
Barbara, ours is the same. And part of the reason is it turns out one of our main reasons for having an office is to have meetings, not with ourselves, but with customers. We're healthcare, so it's providers. We bring providers together to talk about policies or new ways of doing things or whatever. And we can't do that because as long as you can't have more than 10 together. All our company, we have lots of conference rooms and we can't use them. So it's when we're just working amongst ourselves, we can pretty much do that remotely. So I don't know what will ever, how long it'll be. Larry, any other updates for in terms of the department?
Yes, we are conducting interviews right now for filling the vacant health officer's position. So we've interviewed a couple of candidates last week, and I have to meet with Gail when both of us can find some time together and discuss moving forward. I want to get that position filled as soon as I can.
Good.
Right now, the department is still on a 1 day on, 1 day off. The inspectors from next week are probably, based on demand, moved to a regular schedule. And we have already looked at PPE, et cetera, for them. So we're in a good place with that.
Good. Any questions for Larry?
I think I'm good.
I just want to mention from Stephanie's presentation that the market is an essential service. So it is permitted to operate as long as the guidance around personal safety is adhered to. And in discussion with her today, we are aware that many of our neighboring communities are opening their markets. So we're not unique in what we're planning to do. And, food security is important, especially for a lot of people in our community.
Right. I think it's great what you guys have figured out to do, given the space that we've got. It's great.
It's all Stephanie and her crew. She has done a fantastic job putting it together. We have had some discussions. She, even without us having any heavy conversations, she had gone out there and done all her homework. And so when she was ready to start her planning, she had all the information that she needed to really do the planning and meet what the requirements were at that time. I know she rolled the dice on some and she won, because what she was planning for did come out to be a reality, especially around the social distancing and PPE. So
Great, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you to Ashley too, because I couldn't do it alone.
Yeah, both of you.
Yes, thanks both of you. And I'm impressed by the outreach that you've done both with the vendors and the community.
You know, we're not going to have George to come in to kick us out tonight.
no.
I don't know why you didn't invite him to the meeting.
Right.
He's downstairs.
Okay. Next meeting would be, let's see, in my calendar here.
17th of June.
17th of June happens to be my wife's birthday. I know I will be in trouble but I don't, maybe just you guys go ahead.
Unless you want to do it the day before or day after.
I have to look at the calendar and see if there's availability, because like rooms, I don't know how many meetings can be run at the same time. So I will check with Gideon to see the account that we have, and if we can have multiple meetings. I would hope that I would look into see if there's a council meeting on the Tuesday. If there's usually not one, because they hold their meetings on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month, so we shouldn't have a conflict. Maureen and I will look into that and we'll get back to you.
Okay.
I'm trying to find out why I'm having trouble getting out of the Zoom at the moment. Oh, there it was. Not letting me exit for some reason.
Well, if we lose you, John, I'll say goodnight now.
I'm sorry?
If you lock yourself out of the meeting, we'll say goodnight now.
Oh, okay. I don't know where my exit button has disappeared
You
to.
just minimize the window in the upper right-hand corner, and then you can see your calendar
We're
behind
seeing
you.
and hearing you.
Yeah.
Do you see there's 3 dots? And if you put the arrow on your picture, you see 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner?
Yes.
Yeah, now there. All right, now I got it. So
I'm muted anyway.
that whole week looks fine for me. So Tuesday or Thursday would work. 16th or the 18th.
Good for me.
Yeah, they're fine.
Okay, great. So we'll get back to you.
Thank you. All right. Well, the numbers in Massachusetts are certainly going down slower than I think everyone would like, but they are getting lower. So good to hear, and hopefully the getting back into action won't kick them up too much.
Right. And I think that is why we have to really be cautious with our opening and making sure that we're doing the right thing. There are things that are going to be the new normal, and because we really don't want this to have a second wave of this disease.
This is not. My real concern is, especially with our current administration, is that someone will rush to a vaccine too quickly, and it'll have, there's so many histories of the first vaccine on the market has had trouble, and unless it's tested on a lot of people, you're doing a vaccine on a healthy person. Most of the people you give it to are healthy, and or at least don't have the disease, but they may have all sorts of other illnesses, and it's got to be safe, or we're going to undo ourselves. So,
It's also fuel for anti-vaxxers if it
Yeah.
doesn't work the first time
they've already
around.
started, Rich. They've
Yeah.
already started.
Oh, yeah, they've been at it for a while. I mean, you just knew they would be.
And I don't know if you saw there was a initial vaccine for dengue fever that
Yeah.
all sorts of kids sick in the Philippines. And there's a history in pediatrics of the original rotavirus that gave kids intussusception. It's creating viruses are not, you know, if they're rare complications, they happen. And I actually, years ago, got Guillain-Barré after getting a fair amount of time after a flu vaccine. And who knows whether that was related or not.
Yeah.
So it's not easy stuff.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If the virus mutates in 6 months and they come up with a vaccine, but they're coming up with the vaccine for the virus as of today or within present time,
Yeah.
what happens?
It depends where the mutation is and how the vaccine is designed. It's very complicated, and so that's a good question. People don't know. I mean, the good news is, right? I think right now they don't think it's not like the regular winter flu that mutates very easily. They think it's fairly stable, but again, that's time has to tell that. It isn't. We didn't know it existed 6 months ago.
Correct.
So, I mean, all that stuff is really, that's part of being how you develop a vaccine to be sure that you're okay.
Hmm. Interesting.
All right, so
On that happy note,
Yeah.
you want
good
to
night.
adjourn?
Can we adjourn? Do I have a motion?
Second?
All in
Motion.
favor?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Thank you, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Thank you, everybody.